I still want to go back to the first question, Jerry and Carol, and you need to frame this any way you want to. But Agape had a beginning somewhere, and it was sometime, it wasn't Agape when it started, but how did you first become involved in what evolved into Agape? How did you get started in that?
How do you remember?
We got started because we had a family at the church, and the mother left the children, and I think there's 5 children that she left. And so the husband remained faithful, and he asked for help with the children. So we took one of the 5 children, and his name was Little Jimmy, and he was about 4 or 5 years old. And other people in the congregation took him. And so we were asleep one night, and I heard a truck. I heard a car. It was sounded like it was a truck, and it come in our driveway to woke me up. And I remembered that we had little Jimmy, and I said, I bet that's Jimmy's mother. And she came to the door and wanted Jimmy, and so we didn't have any reason that we could keep her from having her own son. So we didn't have any jurisdiction over Jimmy. And so she took Jimmy, and she had several men in the truck, in the car with her. And 1 or 2 of those men came to the door. And so we, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that she came. And so we gave little Jimmy up, and he was like a son to us. And we don't know what happened to him or where he went. But we realized then from that point that if we had to keep children, if we needed to keep children, we had to have a legal right to keep that child. And so the Haskell Clunch and I went to Judge Kenneth Turner's office and sat down and asked him, what do we need to do to keep these children? And he said, well, I can tell you. And he went upstairs. He said, I want you to go with me upstairs. We went upstairs to the 2nd floor. Agape was formed in 1970. And we worked. So we talked with Judge Turner at the juvenile court, and he said, I will help you if you want to keep children. I said, we do. We want to help out with children. And we'd already had some other requests. We had Bobby and Tammy who came to us from their grandmother, and the grandmother was aged, and she said she just could not keep the children. And she took them to juvenile court, and Judge Turner told us about that, and so we went back to starting to foment the agency. And so we had several men that came to different congregations that came to help us to form Agape. Merle Haas was primarily the leading candidate, and we met in he had a store over on Airways, and we met in his property every Monday night until we could get the charter of incorporation set up. So before then, we had to have jurisdiction from Judge Turner to take those children. So he was very instrumental in helping us form Agape. Judge Turner was. And so we met every night, every Monday night at Merle Haas's building, and we developed the things that we had to have to get Agape chartered. And we started with, we submitted a proposal, and Ms. Lannis Turner, I think that was her name, Lannis Turner, she came to help us, and she was very helpful in getting the charter of incorporation and the bylaws and all approved by the state. And so we worked until we got the approval that we needed. After we got the Charter of Incorporation and the bylaws approved, she continued to stay with us. And it was interesting that one of the requirements that she had was that we had to have a hearing in Memphis, and we needed to invite all of the other people that we had child care, and we went to several places to invite them to come, and most of them came to the first session, and after that we had 2 or 3 sessions that were very important, and we had Judge Turner was on our side, and we knew that, and he was very helpful. And Ms. Lannis Turner, who was from the state, she was very helpful in getting the Charter of Incorporation approved. So we met, and we had the main 2 facilities that I can remember were juvenile court, and the Baptist had a big facility on Highway 72, Highway 72, and they came, and we had also people from the one.
Porter Leith.
No, Porter Leith came. They were in business then, and the
Catholic
Catholics,
Charities. Catholic Charities.
the Catholic churches had a thing, and they had they were well known. They'd been in business for 50, 75 years, and so there was not a group, not anyone in that group supported our request. They all said that there was no need for the request to be honored. So we pushed, and we pushed. We had a second meeting with those people, and there was 2 of them came. The Catholics came, and the people from Baptist Church came, and they still said that we didn't need any more facilities in Memphis. And so Porter Leith came too, and they were very helpful. They supported us, and they were the only one that supported us in gaining a Charter of Incorporation for Agape. And so we pursued that, and the second or third time we met, we got approval. And Ms. Young followed that track all the way back to Nashville to see that it was approved, and she called us when it was approved, and we were very thankful. And we had that procedure passed and behind us. That was the beginning of Agape. And we went to Nashville during that time, and before the Charter of Incorporation, we went to Nashville and met with our justice, and they had an Agape in Nashville, and we got a lot of help from him, and they gave us many things that they were using that had been approved, and we were able to use them, and that became the beginning of Agape.
So it started with some families at church
Right,
that had 5 children
right.
that was left, and you took in one, and some other members took in others. So now we're 2 years down the road, and you're incorporated.
Your first child that you had was Jimmy, and so now you're incorporated in 1970. And in addition to, you never found out any more about Jimmy, but how long did you have Jimmy? And at the end of that, by the time you were incorporated, how many children were you serving at that time?
Well, I really don't know the answer to that because we don't have the records. But the 9-Hour Church was very, very instrumental in getting Agape started.
Which church was that?
9-Hour Road Church of Christ. Now it's known as
Now
Forest
it's
Hill.
Okay.
Yeah. And we started buying houses around the property that Forest Hill had. And so, well, the first house we bought was on the northwest corner of the property. And we bought that house, and we made a family with 6 people could live in there. And that facility was approved by the state. And so that was the first building we bought. And we continued to buy buildings as they came available. So we bought several buildings. I think we had about 5 buildings when we left to go to Birmingham. And they continued to support Agape. And they
Made it available to persons who had children who were not as orderly as they should be, or some other factor. We took children that people who had children in homes that couldn't take care of the children, and we took them into the houses, in the cottages. They seemed to work better in the cottages than they did in the homes. So I remember my mother and my daddy had a little girl, and she became so obstinate that they decided that she needed to be someplace else. So they put her in one of the cottages at Mount Arlington. And she ran off the first thing, and we didn't know where she was, and we found her and brought her back, and she became very glad to be at that house.
Carol, what was your first memories of having a child, Jimmy, in your home, and how long was he there?
Jimmy was only with us a few months. As Jerry stated, we lived in this community that was just development in southeast Memphis, and it was known as Parkway Village. And we attended the Knight Arnold Church of Christ. And so many of the families, the young families that was moving in there, that was their dream. You know, you buy your own home, own your own home, and raise your family. That is the type of community that Parkway Village was in the late 50s, and I'll say in the early 60s. And as he stated, it was at church, there was a man and his wife there, and they were having a struggle to make everything work for them. And so one night, out of the blue, she just left him with those 5 children. It was 4 or 5. And he was continued trying to work and take care of them, but it was just more than he could. So he approached the church to ask them if he could get some help. Well, there was, everybody jumped right in, and 4 of the children were taken almost immediately. I think there was a baby. I think Jimmy may have been the oldest one. He was a little boy. And he was left, and there was no place for Jimmy to go. Well, Jerry and I had three little girls ourselves, and it was a struggle, but you know, there was nothing else for us to do but to take Jimmy. So Jimmy came to our house, and I think it was probably in the spring, you know, March or April or something of that type. And, oh, he fit right into the family. I just fell in love with him immediately. And our children, Tia, Teresa, and Marcia, they had a big brother. They were so excited. And not only that, but Jerry had him a son. He followed Jerry around just like a little old puppy dog doing yard work. And it was a great time. It was good. And it was beginning to get school time, and oh, our household was in such a buzz. Everybody was so excited. Jimmy was going to get to start to school. We got school supplies, we got clothes. We did all the things that a mother with the first child does with their child going off to school.
Mm-hmm.
We never got to experience that moment. As Jerry told you, there was this rap-a-tap-tap on our door one night, and there was a mother. and she had come to get the child. And we begged, we pleaded, we persuaded her. But she was going to get her child. We had no recourse. And I went to the bedroom and I got Jimmy. I walked in there and to this day, I can feel that child's arms around my neck. His legs was locked around my back. And tears rolled down his cheeks, down my neck. As she pulled him from my arms. We haven't heard from Jimmy or any of the other children that were taken out. And the church prayed diligently that those 5 children would be taken care of. And I'm sure that they have been. I have tried to research some to find him, but, of no avail. There was no tracking. Now that's how I remember the moment. I guess the seed was planted that something had to be done, that Jerry has explained it had to be done. And the men started about doing it, and it was a long process. So that had been about 1964. So there was several years in there of finding out what had to be done. As Jerry mentioned, Haskell Clonch had worked as a social worker in Mississippi, so he had quite a bit of knowledge about the procedures and things. None of us had a clue what to do, didn't have a clue what we needed to do. But he said you needed a license. So that was a process. Started trying to get a license. It wasn't an easy road. But I remember there was, Sherry had mentioned Merle Haas. And he was a go-getter. That's the only way I know how to do it. He was a go-getter, and he was determined to make this work. And as Jerry was mentioning about the houses, at that time, so much of the child care they thought at that time that should use a cottage. That was the best way to go about it. Just place them in a cottage. And so a lot of that was being done before Agape was ever started. So the cottages were prepared. Raleigh had a bunch. East Fraser had a bunch. I'll just put it this way: the different congregations in the Memphis area really did rally to the cause of trying to take care of the children. And we came by way of knowing there was an attorney at East Fraser. He was contacted, and so there we had somebody that knew about social work. Merle was a go-getter. He was finding out about the licensing. We had an attorney that could deal with Tennessee. So things were falling together, but it didn't happen overnight. It was over a long period of time. And it was, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 years after Jimmy's departure before they went to Nashville. And they were interviewed there, or they did interview there, gathered information, came back home, went through it, pulled out what they could, and but anyway, as I said, eventually, with the help of many people who had the same interest and the same goal, was to help the children. But I would say, and then I would say that Judge Kenneth Turner was probably one of the greatest advocates that helped to get Agape going. And I know that he and Jerry were very close, because Jerry worked extremely close with him. And I guess you could say we was the first intake cottage. We lived in our little cracker box on Perkins Road in Parkway Village, And
I worked at the post office at night, and starting mail, and he'd call me, Judge Turner called me when he get some children, and he wanted us to take them. And he said, I got 2 children for you. I want to mention these 2. I don't remember the children's names, but he said that the police had brought these children in. They had been picked up in the median of a street in Memphis, and the 2 little boys were in a room about this size, and one was on one side of the house, of the room, and the other on the other side, and they were as different as children could be. They didn't even have hair alike. One had red hair and the other had kind of almost a white hair. And so I got those 2 children, took them home, and we'd call Carol and tell her, I'm gonna bring some children home. And she said, okay, bring them home. And so we brought children home like that, and then we would take and put them in the cottages that Arnold had. And we did that for some time. And but he would always call me, and I'd go by and pick up children from the
Yeah, so what, 4 to 6 children or something like that?
There'd be house parents, they called them house parents.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would be on the top, they tried never any more than 6. They just tried to have it in a family setting.
Right, right.
Do we need to wait? Or
Yes, yeah, it's not taping right now. Yeah, it is. It's cool.
Is it taping?
Okay, I'm sorry.
But anyway, back to, it actually finally got to the point where Judge Turner didn't even call Jerry. He just sent somebody out with the house with some children. And they would usually come, and they were very unkept, not groomed well, not clean. They didn't even smell good sometimes. And each child would come with a grocery sack that was about half full of clothes or their total possessions. That would be it.
But those little boys I picked up had been brought in by the police. They didn't have any clothes except what they had on.
And a lot of times the children, of course, they were terrified. They had no idea. We had no idea what they had been through. But when they came to our house, they had no idea what they were getting into. A lot of times they would be, and see now, you've got to remember that I had 3 children there, and the oldest one, maybe 2 was 6 and 5, they were like 3, 5, and 6 or something like that. That was our family, and that was actually before Kenneth was born. And someone would say, well, Carol, what did you do with them? And I said, well, when they were crying, I had this old chair that my mother had given me, old thing, and it went womp, 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 womp when you rocked. And I would just gather the kids up in my arms, and luckily, our children would go and play. I don't remember them ever being a problem. I mean, neglecting them. But I'd get in that old chair and they would cry and go, wonk, wonk. At some point, I cried with them. And usually the 3 of us would stop our tears about the same time. All I did was show them love, comfort.
Jerry Carroll, in every ministry like this, there's a 1 or 2 turning points that really shifts, and you see growth, and you see something exciting, and you think, man, we're taking this to a new level. Was there a turning point or 2 in your ministry with Agape that stands out?
I don't remember how it came about, but we had several congregations, big congregations in Memphis that were supporting us in the effort to get Agape started. And Carol mentioned one, the attorney in East Fraser,
Joe Hopper.
Joe Hopper. He submitted everything we needed to submit at no charge, and he was very, very good attorney. And he stayed with us until I think he died. He died very young. But I think that was one turning point. Another turning point was when we went to the congregations and asked them if they wanted to be a member of Agape. Their membership was $100. And so we got some funds there and started to hire directors. And the first director we had was...
May I interject something right there? I thought it was very touching. Agape was started by basically a group of people. Young people who had young families that were struggling, and they just did not have to lose $100 or anything like that. So we had in not only there was a elder there that worked for a bank. So he worked with the bank so that people could borrow $100 and pay it back over a period of 12 months, interest free. And that's the way they started getting some money on that. And excuse me, but Jerry told his turning point. I think the turning point for Agape really came when Nick Boone, as the first director, came on board. But see, he, quote unquote, was not qualified to do that work. He had the schooling, but he did not have the 2 years experience that was required. So they worked out with Howard Justice in Nashville that he would supervise his work. So I think the turning point of Agape came when the money was raised and Nick Boone came on board. And people beginning to see we work and we've got the name. I have some of the original artwork that Betty Malone did, some of the napkins and things that she things. And of course we had auctions and we had this and that and the other trying to raise money. And the churches, that was when y'all went to the churches and asked them to start putting it into the budget. You know, this is just a slow progress over the years. They went to the churches and asked them to start including it in their budget.
We had several churches that started that.
And
Germantown was one of them. And I believe they've been supporting Agape every month since then.
I don't think they've missed any time. They've never dropped out. Some other churches have. But anyway, those are just some points of time, you know. And, it was very heartwarming. And the love that was poured into the beginning of Agape, it has done a complete about face, I would say. Because practically all the workers were just businessmen and housewives. You didn't have the professionals that you have in Agape now. So it has moved forward marvelously. And what we did was very elementary, Jerry. And it has been built on by so many people, you know, since that time. And not only, and it hasn't stopped. It's just like a rocket was set off, and she's going, and she's going, and she's going. But it hadn't reached her end or her destination yet.
I'm very pleased with the FIT program. And I know that there are other things doing that's Agape is doing that I don't know about. But I'm very pleased to know that Agape is doing the FIT program.
And as I was just trying to say, so much of the work was done by just
Ordinary people.
ordinary people, stay-at-home moms, blue-collar daddies that went to work from 8 to 6 in the night. And they were just filled with love and devotion. They saw the need, and they did what they could to, you know, to try to fulfill it. And we've just talked about, that is just the early years of it. I think it was chartered in 1969, so the things that we've been speaking about took place up till about 1970 or 71. At that time, Jerry and I, we moved. We were moved to Birmingham, Alabama. And so we kept up with it, my word, but we weren't involved in it anymore as we had been. New jobs, now we had 4 children, moving children, and honestly, we came from a bedroom community, Jerry and I, where you grow up, no, there's a mother and a father, no, there's a grandmother and the fathers, there's the mothers and the fathers, there's the children. These children marry and have children. They have children. They still stay in this bedroom community. When Jerry and I moved in 1956, 120 miles from that bedroom community, it wasn't any more devastating to our parents if they had put us in a rocket and sent us to the moon. We can't believe you're moving so far away from us. But anyway, now with that, from moving from our hometown of McKenzie and Huntington, Tennessee to Memphis, when we moved to Birmingham in 1971, that was really something. But anyway, and it was our first move. We were this settled bedroom group, and so it was our first move. Little did I know that he's going to yank me around for another 13 years or 14 years. But anyway, it was good. But we kind of lost it because we were involved. We were there for about 4 years, and we were sent to Mobile, Alabama. Why would we be sent to Mobile, Alabama? Well, it was a promotion for him. He became the postmaster. I won't tell you that he took the office one afternoon at 1 o'clock, had to report to work Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And we were building a house that was about 75% under construction. Dream house. Everything was just like Carol wanted it. Never got to spend the night in it. But anyway, I moved, and he...
That's not part of Agape.
Well, it is. It's about those silent years, honey. And so while we were there's a silent year. But when we got to Mobile, they had heard about our work with Agape. And so there was already a lot of interest in Mobile. So Jerry and Carol was called up on it, and so in 9 months, it could not have been any more than 9 months, because that's as long as we lived there. We were able to, well, Jerry, I just put Jerry was able to work with the men, and there's some ladies on the committee there, and they came to our house on Sunday afternoon after lunch, and got it together, and they had their charter and license in about 9 months. So you know why God sent us to Mobile? He only sent us there to further the work that had been started here.
With children.
And then from Mobile, we moved, but several times in that. And we came back to Memphis for a couple of years. That was a little bit from 78 to 79. And we kind of got into it, but not really. And then we were off again and moving. And we did not move back until 1991. Those were solid years, but when Jerry came back in 1991, he hit the ground running with Agape again. So,
Well, it's evident that for both of you that since the time that Jimmy showed up in your life, that you've been touched by this ministry and you kind of spread that word, even though you've moved around.
absolutely.
So it's evident that it's touched your life in very strong and significant ways. What would you say to other people who may not be aware of what Agape is doing today? Is there anything that you would say to them? That here's a ministry that you might need to take a look at and get involved with because it can touch your life in a significant way. What would you say to them about Agape?
I would say that if you want to be like God wants us to be, you would get involved in something like Agape and give your best in doing it. And you can't do anything more basic in following the Bible than you do if you have little children. They're mentioned many times in the Bible, and so often they're not blessed to have parents. I want to mention this. My father and mother kept young women in their home prior to establishing Agape, and I knew that in Carol.
Fortunate to have parents that love children. And at that time, the girls who got pregnant would, their family would seek a home for them to go stay until the baby was born. And then after the baby was born, the girl came back to her mother and father, and she never saw the child after that. That was what was done in the early 60s. And so my mother and daddy were keeping girls like that. And I went to I went with my daddy to the hospital where a girl had a baby, and she had not seen her baby, and she was very traumatic at that time. And so I thought to myself, this is not what we really want. This is not what we really want. We want something that's better than this. And those girls were treated like they were strangers from their own parents. And I couldn't do that. But Mother and Daddy kept them. They kept several girls at that time. And my mother and my daddy were very much involved in it.
This, I love telling about Agape, and I have an opportunity there. I guess there's, every week, 10 days or 2 weeks, I will have an opportunity to tell somebody about Agape, because I have been searching, for things to get to outfit one of the fit houses, because I think it's a great program. I think it's a wonderful way to go for a family, and I will tell them what I'm doing. They said, well, I haven't heard about this. What is this? I says, well, it's one of the programs of Agape. Well, what is Agape? I says, well, it's an organization that's founded here in Memphis, and I says it started out trying to help needy children, and it has grown now that it not only helps children, but it helps families. Well, what do they do? I says, well, this program that I'm talking about is just one of many they have. I says, someone will come to them asking for help, and there's an interview system that they go through, and if the people think that they are sincere, they're trying to turn their lives around, then they reach out and help them. And it has to basically be a mother where there is no father involved or no man involved in the life. It can be a mother that's just pregnant. It can be a mother that has 4 or 5 kids and what they do. In several of the areas in Memphis, they have gone into apartment complexes, and they go into the area of Memphis that is kind of a poverty-stricken area. And they will go in and they'll rent 4, 5, 6 apartments. Or I don't know how many, or several. And then they will furnish those apartments with everything that is basically needed. It's not new stuff, it's just stuff that's contributed off. They will set them up in this apartment, and they'll get the children enrolled in school if there's children, and if it's an unwed mother, they'll see that she has care. And I said, during that 2-year period of time, she has to pretty well get her life straightened out. She has to get a job, and if she has done all these things, a finished school, a job, then they give her the apartment and everything in it, and all she has to do is just pick up the rent. The children do not have to move from their friends. They do not have to change. I think it's a wonderful program. And people are very, very interested. And I said, not only that, they have a social worker that they move in that works with them all the time. And I said, that is a part of Agape. And I says, there's so many people that they help. Just not like that. It's just too numerous, and I think it's thousands that they help every year. I don't have the figures. I wish I could tell you. And they want to know where they can get more information. So I tell them very quickly, go to the internet. Pick up the phone and call. So that is how, as I say, I am very heavily involved, and I just want to get those 10 apartments finished so badly, so I can go on some more.
Bless you. It's very good.
It's a great work.
There have been lots of Jimmies that have been cared for since you took in little Jimmy.
That's right.
And a lot of lives have been touched in some very special ways. And more recently, the two of you have made some changes in your estate plan to
We
help
have.
perpetuate that ministry so that future Jimmys can be helped and served. What does it mean to you to know that you're going to be able to help future generations of little Jimmys that you will never know and never see?
I have a big regret about it. I regret that we cannot do more.
We're very thankful that God has placed us in an area where we could be used. We're very thankful.
How would you describe how your life is different today than it might possibly have been as a result of Agape being a part of your life?
Well, I don't really know the answer to that. I just live one day at a time. And I'm very thankful for Agape. I'm thankful for you keeping it going. And I'm thankful for the people who are involved in Agape. And I've known a lot of people who are involved in Agape. And I'm thankful for that.
I have learned to be more compassionate, especially with children. I'm very touched for those that hurt. And I think the involvement there has given me a much stiffer backbone to deal with a lot of things. And I'm thankful for it. I thank God daily that He has blessed me with an extra measure of being able to remember and to keep my mind. That I can talk to others and tell them. And I'm just sorry that I can't gather all of them up in my arms and love them. But I can't be selfish. Others have to help us. And it has had a big impact in our life. whether we realize what it is or not. But we care a lot. We've left out so much of the story, so many of the events, so many of those sweet little children that came through. Jerry mentioned little Tammy and Bobby. Oh, they were so adorable. We kept them in our house a lot. Little Bobby was about the age of our Kenneth. And oh, I have some pictures. I saw them the other day, them in the middle of the bed jumping. One of my things that I just never liked was kids jumping on the bed. Because mother had told me a story about a child jumping on the bed when she was real young, and the child fell off the bed, broke his neck. So, you know, I just would never let my kids jump on the bed in my presence. But, you know, they did it when this way. But I could see little old Bobby right now, little old sandy-headed kid, freckles all over his nose. Adorable. Jerry and I would have adopted those children, even though we had 4. But the grandmother would always show up the day before, what was it, every 6 weeks or 3 months, you know, they had to have a visit from the family. She'd show up 2 or 3 days before, so they were not adoptable. But
She kept them from being adopted.
But anyway, there's just numerous of them. The little boys he was talking about, that was Harry and Ross Wilson. And a lot of the children, I can't remember the names. They would just come in just like a revolving door. You know, they'd bring them in and we'd work with them and they'd take them out. So it was...
Well, there were people like the people lived there on the corner across the street from the church.
Oh, Doris Jean and Irby Cole.
Yeah.
We should...
He was confined to a chair, and he couldn't walk, and so they kept children in their home consistently. I don't know if they still have children, but they're about our age.
And the reason he was in a wheelchair, he was one of the last ones in that age level that got polio before they came out with the vaccine. But they were things, but their home was one of the intake homes, and before, you know, they started being able to do that. So it was a progressive things from neglected children
His name
to
is
people who care.
Herbie Cole.
Irby and Doris Jean.
Herbie and Doris Jean Cole.
And to just taking in some children to building homes and housing them that way and moving on to something better to get a organization so children could be placed in other things like that, and it moved from just helping children to helping families or helping unwed mothers. There was, and back in the 50s, unwed mother was, oh, that was just taboo. It's very bad in the 60s. And so it's gone from that now to, I don't know how to describe agape now. It has just grown in such marvelous ways. I don't know how to describe what it is doing and how it works. But I know it's doing great things because it was founded on the right principles. And the leaderships in it has been God-fearing man that has kept it strong.
David has done a lot to
He's visionary.
yeah, he has done a lot to further agape.
But
Take
two
it
of
to
you
new
have been
horizons.
involved since the seed of this thing. It's been about 50 years. You talked about Jimmy at 64, 65. So the seed has been there about 50 years. What would be your hopes and aspirations for Agape the next 50 years if the Lord doesn't come? What would be your dream and
I
vision?
would hope that Agape could expand their program, much like the FIT program, and help families that need help. I don't think that the black people will ever get out of poverty if they don't get help. I don't think they'll ever get out of poverty. They're born into it, they live it, and they go to school that way. They come home, they get most of their meals at school, and I don't think that you can change their lifestyle unless you help them.
The thing that I would like to see, Agape was founded by Christian men and women, and it was a church sponsored organization by the Churches of Christ in the, I'll just say, the Shelby County area. And I would like to see it I don't want Agape to get so far from its founding, who founded it and why it was founded, that it just becomes another organization that's doing
Okay,
good.
I'd like to say that I was on the board when David was hired, and I think it was a good thing that he came to be with us. And I think that he's done tremendous good in helping the particular ladies in the FIT program, and I'm thankful for that. And I hope that he stays with us 50 more years.